Someone left him in a suitcase by gate C. When we unzipped it, he didn't move, just looked up like he still expected them to come back. He was a German Shepherd puppy, maybe 5, 6 months old, bone thin, barely able to lift his head, his fur damp from his own breath trapped inside the suitcase. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He just looked at us with those dark, waiting eyes as if still hoping the people who left him would walk back through the doors at Denver International Airport. I was the one who found him. My name's Eric. I work security here. Gate C was busy that afternoon. Sun pouring through the high windows, flight announcements echoing overhead, people rushing past like always. But then someone called it in. There's an abandoned suitcase near the vending machines. Protocol kicked in. We were supposed to treat it like a potential threat, but it wasn't a bomb. It was a breathing, terrified little life. I'll never forget the sound the zipper made as it peeled back. I expected wires, maybe clothes. Not this, not a German Shepherd puppy curled up like luggage with a collar that read one word, Ray. No tag, no microchip, just a name. He didn't flinch when I reached in. His tiny ribs rose and fell fast like he was panicking silently. But his eyes, they never left the entrance, as if he was counting on them to come back. I knelt down right there on the floor in front of everyone, businessmen, kids with ice cream, pilots passing by, and I cradled that puppy in my arms. He didn't resist. He just sank into me, completely limp, like his little heart had already decided it was over. How long had he been in there? How long can a puppy wait? I radioed for help, told dispatch it was alive. A dog, a puppy, alive but barely. While I waited, I tried to offer him water. He didn't drink. I opened a protein bar from my bag. He didn't care, just kept staring at that door. People gathered. Some took photos. One lady cried. A flight attendant asked if she could sit with us until help came. We just sat there surrounding him with the warmth of strangers while the crowd passed us like nothing had happened. It hit me hard. All that movement, all that rush, and still nobody noticed. The suitcase wasn't empty. I don't know who did it. I don't know why. But someone made the decision to zip up a living soul and leave it behind. And somehow, despite all that, Rye still waited, still believed, still hoped. What kind of heart does that? When animal control arrived, Rye didn't struggle. He didn't growl or whimper. He just let them lift him out of my arms like he'd already given up deciding who to trust. The officer looked him over, gently touched his paws and said softly, "He's ice cold." I could see the question forming in her eyes, the same one that had haunted me since I unzipped that suitcase. How long had he been in there? We walked him out together through the side entrance, avoiding the crowd. The sun outside was blinding, bouncing off the concrete. It should have been a relief. Open air, blue sky, but Ray squinted and pressed into my leg like the light hurt. A German Shepherd puppy like him should have been bounding with energy, but his paws dragged. His ears were low. He didn't even sniff the grass. They placed him in a soft crate inside the van and closed the doors gently. I stood there, hands still on the handle. I didn't want to let go. I didn't understand why. I'd only known him an hour, but something about him, the way he never cried, never lashed out, just waited, trusted, it stuck to me like a weight in my chest. I asked where they were taking him. Aurora's shelter, the officer said. They've got an on-call vet. We'll check for internal injuries. He's probably dehydrated. Could be worse. Could be worse. That phrase kept looping in my head as the van pulled away. I knew the shelter. I knew the overcrowding, the hard choices they faced daily. Ray would get a number, a file, maybe a blanket. But what if he didn't eat? What if he didn't respond? What if he just waited there too? I went back inside, but the terminal looked different. No longer just a place of movement. It felt heavier, like the echo of something left behind. My shift ended at 6 o'clock, but I stayed in the break room, replaying it all. The suitcase, the silence, the way his eyes had searched the crowd. My phone buzzed. A co-worker had posted about Ray on the staff message board. Anyone know who left a puppy in a suitcase at Gate C? No ID. Shelter took him. I didn't reply. I just stared at that message. And then without thinking, I opened Google Maps. looked up directions to the shelter. It was only 22 minutes away. That night I didn't sleep. I kept seeing the way Ray's chest had risen. Fast, shallow, like he wasn't just breathing, but bracing. Bracing for abandonment. And I kept hearing that zipper. That sound will never leave me. I showed up at the shelter before they even opened. The parking lot was still mostly empty, the sun just starting to creep over the horizon, painting everything in gold. I sat in my truck, gripping the steering wheel, unsure what I was even doing. I'm not the kind of guy who gets attached. I've worked airport security for years. I've seen things left behind every day. Laptops, wallets, even wedding dresses once. But this wasn't luggage. This was a German Shepherd puppy. This was Ray. When the shelter doors finally opened, I stepped inside and was met with the familiar smell. A mix of bleach, fur, and something that always reminded me of quiet heartbreak. A receptionist looked up, smiled politely and asked, "How can I help you?" I didn't even know what to say at first. I'm looking for a puppy that came in yesterday," I said, left at the airport in a suitcase. Her face changed immediately. "Oh, you mean the shepherd? He's in medical right now. Just hang on." She disappeared through a side door. Seconds felt like minutes. When she came back, she nodded. "You can come back if you want. He's stable, but quiet." She led me down a narrow hallway to a small exam room. And there he was. Ray was lying on a towel, IV in his front leg, a little patch of fur shaved near the insertion. His ears twitched when I stepped inside, and he lifted his head barely, just enough to look at me. That same look, like he was still waiting. I crouched down, resting my arms on the edge of the table. "Hey, buddy," I whispered. "You made it." He blinked slowly. No tail wag, no whimper, but he didn't look away. The vet came in, a young woman with tired eyes and a calm voice. "He's lucky," she said, flipping through his chart. "No broken bones, just dehydration, muscle weakness, early signs of heat stress. He's going to need a few days of fluids and quiet." I nodded, eyes still on Ray. "Has anyone come forward?" "No one," she said. "We scanned him twice. No microchip posted on local boards, contacted lost pet groups, nothing. Of course, whoever left him zipped up like a carry-on hadn't planned on returning." I reached out and gently laid my hand near his paw. He didn't move away, just let it be there. The vet gave me a few more details, but I barely heard her. My focus was on this little life that had been tossed aside, yet still held on like someone was coming back, like love could still find him. I knew right then I couldn't just walk away again. Not from him. That afternoon I filled out a visitor form and waited in the shelter's small side garden while Ray rested. They wouldn't release him yet, not until the vet gave the all clear. But they let me sit with him outside under the trees in the quiet. He moved slow. Every step was deliberate, like his legs were learning to trust the ground again. But when he saw me on the bench, he paused, tilted his head, and walked straight over. No hesitation. He pressed his body against my leg and sat. A German Shepherd puppy, abandoned, zipped into a suitcase, half-starved, chose to sit beside me like I was the one thing in his world that made sense. I didn't deserve that kind of trust. I reached down, resting my hand on his back. "You're not supposed to make this hard," I whispered. "You're supposed to make it easy to walk away." He blinked up at me, eyes still rimmed with exhaustion, and laid his chin on my knee. I thought of all the things I had waiting back home, which wasn't much, honestly. A one-bedroom apartment near the airport, coffee stains on the counter, a quiet fridge, silence, no barking, no paws on tile, just the hum of a fan, and a life I'd gotten used to keeping small. When I was 10, my dad brought home a German Shepherd named Duke. Tough, loyal, loud as hell. He was my shadow for 5 years until cancer took him. I remember burying my face in Duke's fur that last day and thinking I'd never want another dog. The pain was too much. Looking at Ray now, soft, quiet, broken in a different way, I felt that old fear start to rise again. The fear of opening up, the fear of losing. "I don't know if I can do this," I muttered. Ray shifted, looked up, and then for the first time, his tail moved barely. One slow wag. That was it. Just a little flick, but it cracked something open in me. I didn't even know was still locked shut. I sat with him until the sun started slipping behind the trees, and the vet came to take him in for the night. "Can I come back tomorrow?" I asked. She smiled. "He'll be waiting." The next morning, I didn't even check the time. I just drove. Denver traffic blurred past my windows like static. I don't remember stopping for coffee. I don't remember the radio. I just remember turning into the shelter lot and seeing a light still on in the medical wing. My chest tightened like I was bracing for bad news. But when I stepped through the front door, the receptionist looked up and smiled. "He's awake," she said softly, "and he's been looking toward that door since 5 a.m. I swallowed hard. "Can I sit with him again?" She didn't answer, just handed me a visitor badge and pointed. She paused, then looked at me. "We know you've been here a lot. If you're thinking about it, we can start the paperwork early." I opened my mouth, then closed it. I hadn't said it out loud yet, but I think the answer had been sitting in my chest since the moment that suitcase unzipped. It wasn't logic. It wasn't timing. It was something else. Something in his silence, in the way he never stopped hoping, even when he had every reason to. "I don't know what I'm doing," I finally said. "I've got a small place. I work long shifts. I haven't had a dog in 20 years." She smiled gently. "Sometimes they choose you, and you figure out the rest together." I looked back down at Ray. He was watching me again, calm, steady, like he was already home. "I'll fill out the forms," I said quietly. "If he wants me, I'll be here." The adoption form sat heavy in my lap. I'd filled in every blank, signed every line, but it still didn't feel real. I kept looking at the last question. "What made you decide to adopt this dog?" There was no checkbox for "because he was left in a suitcase and still believed in people." No option for "because he looked at me like I was already his." I left it blank. When they brought Ray out to meet me that day, he wasn't hooked up to wires anymore. No medical tape, just a soft collar and those same deep eyes still carrying more silence than any puppy should. But this time, when he saw me, he trotted. It wasn't fast. He still limped slightly, but it was a trot. Ears perked, tail low, but moving, nose pointed straight at me like there was no one else in the world. The staff watched quietly. One of them murmured, "He hasn't done that for anyone else." He stopped just in front of me, then sat, looked up, waited. I lowered myself to his level and placed my hand on his chest. "You ready?" I asked. He didn't move, just leaned forward until his forehead touched mine. The ride home was quiet. He sat in the passenger seat, curled up in the blanket they'd given me at the shelter. Every time we hit a stoplight, I'd glance over just to make sure he was real, that this wasn't something my heart had made up to fill an old hollow. Back at the apartment, I opened the door and hesitated. My place had never smelled like anything but stale air and black coffee. It had never echoed with steps other than mine. But today, it would start to change. He walked in slowly, sniffed the edge of the couch, circled the rug twice, then stopped and looked at me like he was asking if it was okay to stay. I sat down on the floor. He came to me without a word, laid down against my leg, exhaled. Later that evening, I made dinner. Nothing special, just rice and boiled chicken. He watched every move like it was magic. When I set the bowl down, he didn't lunge for it. He looked at me first, like he was asking permission. "Go ahead," I said. "It's yours now." He ate slowly, carefully, like he wasn't sure when the next meal would come, but trusted that maybe this time it wouldn't be his last. That night I rolled out an old sleeping bag on the living room floor. I didn't want him to be alone, but by the time I shut off the light, Rye had already curled up at the foot of my bed. He was home, and somehow so was I. The call came just after noon. I was in the kitchen slicing up apple pieces and watching Ray chew on a rubber bone, like it was the greatest invention in the world. He'd finally started playing. Not wild, not careless, just soft bites, gentle growls, his tail flicking every so often like a wind-up toy finding its rhythm. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Hi, is this Eric?" the voice asked, female, polite. "I'm calling from Aurora Shelter. You adopted a German Shepherd puppy named Ray?" My stomach dropped. "Yes." Is something wrong? There was a pause. Too long. Well, she said, we just received a message from someone who saw our listing. She believes Rye might be her dog. She says he went missing 2 weeks ago. She described him. Same markings, same size, and sent a photo. It's very similar. The knife in my hand froze midair. What does this mean? I asked, my voice lower than I meant it to be. She's coming in tomorrow to confirm. We have to check all potential reunifications. I'm sorry. I know this is hard, but legally if she's the rightful owner. She didn't have to finish. I already knew. When I hung up, I just stood there. Ray had stopped chewing. He was watching me, head tilted, ears forward as if he sensed the shift in the room. I sat down beside him, one hand on his chest. His heartbeat was steady. I don't know what to do, I whispered. He licked my wrist once, then rested his head on my knee like he always did. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to imagine some woman walking through the shelter doors, falling to her knees, crying out, Ray, there you are, and me standing in the background, fading out of his life like I was never meant to be in it. But here's the thing I couldn't shake. If he really had someone out there, someone who loved him, someone who missed him, why was he zipped in a suitcase? Why didn't they call sooner? Why didn't they come looking? The next morning, I drove to the shelter before the woman's appointment time. Appointment time. I asked if I could be there just in case, then agreed to let me wait in the lobby. Ray sat beside me, his leash wrapped lightly around my wrist. He looked around curious, but calm, as if the place didn't scare him anymore. Every time the door opened, my heart slammed against my ribs. And then she walked in, mid-30s, nice coat, holding her phone. Her eyes scanned the room, locked onto Ray. She approached and Ray didn't move. He didn't flinch, didn't lift his head. She crouched, called softly. Maximum. Ray blinked, looked past her. She held out the photo. It wasn't him. The dog in her picture had lighter ears, a different stripe along the chest. Close, but not Ray. The shelter staff politely explained. She left quietly, maybe a little embarrassed. I sat there frozen, still waiting for my heart to catch up. Ray stood up, shook once, then placed his paw on my foot as if to say, still here, still yours. That night I left the leash hanging by the door. Ray didn't need it. He followed me from room to room like a quiet shadow, settling nearby but never in the way. When I sat down, he curled up by my feet. When I got up, he stood too. I realized I hadn't turned on the TV in days. The silence between us felt fuller than any noise I could have filled it with. I kept thinking about the look on his face when that woman said Max. He didn't flinch, didn't perk up, didn't even pretend. He just waited, watched her leave, then placed his paw on my foot like a signature. I couldn't explain the relief, like someone had lifted a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. He wasn't going anywhere. He was mine, or maybe I was his. The next morning, I let him outside for his usual walk around the complex. He was still learning the routine, still hesitated at open gates, still turned back every few steps like he needed confirmation I'd follow. I watched him sniff a bush, paw gently at a leaf, then lift his head as if something caught his attention. His ears twitched. He stood still. Then suddenly he bolted. It wasn't panic. It was purpose. He tore across the sidewalk up the path toward the front of the building. My heart jumped. Ray, I called, but he didn't stop. I sprinted after him, barefoot, not even thinking. He darted to the far side of the parking lot and stopped near the row of trash bins and just stood there. By the time I caught up, breath short, heart pounding, Ray was frozen in place, eyes locked on something beside the green dumpster. An old suitcase, faded blue, one handle torn, zipper rusted halfway open. It wasn't the same one. I knew that. But it was close. Too close. Ray didn't growl, didn't bark. He inched forward and sniffed, then took 2 steps back and sat. His tail tucked slightly, his ears dropped. He remembered. I sank down beside him, placed a hand on his back. He was shaking just a little, like the memory had returned in full color. I didn't say anything, didn't try to pull him away. We just sat there together. After a while, he stood up on his own. One last glance at the suitcase. Then he turned and walked back toward the apartment, slow, steady, without looking back. That night, he slept beside my bed. He didn't twitch, didn't whimper. He slept through until morning, chest rising and falling in soft, even breaths. He was starting to heal. And this time, the past didn't follow him home. The change was subtle at first. Ray started walking with more confidence. His tail, once low and guarded, now swayed gently behind him. He didn't flinch at sudden noises anymore. He didn't check the door every time it opened. And for the first time since I brought him home, he let out a bark, a real one. Loud, deep, proud. It happened on a Sunday morning. I had just stepped out onto the balcony with a cup of coffee when a neighbor's kid darted past on a scooter, squealing with laughter. Ray barked once from inside the apartment, then looked up at me like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be loud. "You're good," I said, grinning. "That's what dogs do." He tilted his head, then barked again, like testing the echo. That evening, I took him to the edge of the park for the first time. I had been nervous about it, unsure how he'd react to crowds, leashes, open space, but he walked beside me like he'd done it his whole life. A couple joggers passed us. A child waved at him. Ray didn't hide. He stood still, ears perked, and even let the kid pet his back for a few seconds before calmly stepping away. It wasn't a miracle. It was progress. Later that night, I found myself scrolling through the photo gallery on my phone. I didn't even remember taking most of them. Ray asleep under the table, Ray licking peanut butter off a spoon,